Welcome to Lair the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, a first in a series of what I'm calling legendary live albums. These are albums that capture the energy and excitement of a band in a live setting. They often feature live versions of some of their most famous songs, or reworked and re-energized versions of old classics, and they can go on to be career-defining moments for these bands. So the album that I've picked for today is Live and Dangerous by Thin Lizzy. I'm a big fan of live albums because for me, they can give you a different insight into songs compared to the studio versions. You get to hear the band and the energy of the crowd, and a great live album can put you there and make you feel like you're right in the front row. And this is arguably one of the greatest hard rock live albums of all time. It certainly appears in the top of most people's lists when they're ranking great live albums. And there's a reason for that, because this album is just fantastic. It catches, in my opinion, Thin Lizzy at the peak of their powers, featuring the classic lineup of the band of Scott Gorham and Brian Robertson on guitar, Brian Downey on drums, and of course, the legendary Phil Lynott on bass and vocals. At this point in the band's career, they were eight albums in, although this album mostly features the songs from their last 5 records. In fact, there's only one song from their earlier first 3 albums, the song I'm a Rocker from their 3rd album, Vagabonds of the Western World. And the rest of the songs are pretty evenly spread across their last 5 albums. This album was released in 1978, but it was pulled from shows from their 1977 tour. What happened was the band wanted to make another studio record. Their producer, Tony Visconti, was busy, so they thought, all right, we'll just make a live album. And like I said, they picked mostly from the 5 albums leading up to this, and most from their most popular album, Jailbreak. In fact, there's 5 songs here from Jailbreak, 2 from Nightlife, 2 from Fighting, 2 from Bad Reputation, 3 from Johnny the Fox, and there's actually 2 songs that aren't on any of the studio albums, Are You Ready? And Baby Drives Me Crazy, which maybe, I don't know if maybe they were singles or something, or I'm not sure if they were written, just done in a live setting, which I think is pretty cool. Another reason why I like live albums, because sometimes you'll get that, something that the band never did on a studio record, maybe a cover song or something. So this album is just great. It's produced fantastically. The guitars sound great. Scott Gorham and Brian Robinson are just absolutely amazing. The interplay between the two of them is just great, especially when you hear them when they're trading off or when they're going into those classic Thin Lizzy guitar harmonies. It is just fantastic. The guitars sound amazing. Phil's bass sounds great. One complaint I sometimes have with some of the Thin Lizzy studio albums is that Phil's bass just isn't loud enough on some of them. Like, for instance, on Jailbreak, I wish that his bass was a little bit louder. So on here, you really got Phil's bass right in the middle, the guitars left and right, so you can really hear everything. And in my opinion, it injects a little bit more energy into some of these songs. They really come to life in the live setting. I mean, Thin Lizzy was an amazing live band, and they really, in my opinion, capture that energy on this record. Brian Downey's drums sound amazing, and it is a perfectly timed album too. Sometimes bands will release a live album too soon. I would say maybe Rainbows on Stage falls into that category where you kind of wish that they could have released it maybe after Long Live Rock and Roll, or maybe the band releases it too late, like Black Sabbath's Live Evil, where you wish there was a proper live album that had come out earlier during the Ozzy era. But for me, this is just, it's timed perfectly. All the songs on this are great. There's also a great flow to the record, too. You have your fast, it starts off with Jailbreak. I mean, an amazing concert opener, moves right into Emerald, and then it slows down, and it kind of goes like that through the whole record, where you got a couple fast ones, and then the pace goes down. And because Thin Lizzy, their catalog was so great, they had so many different types of songs, slow songs, fast songs, more aggressive songs, funkier type songs. So it really makes for a great show, and it feels like this is structured like a live show. Sometimes when you have live albums, it just feels like they just sort of moved things around. In other words, randomly picked some live things here and there. But this really feels like you're there, you're watching a show. Uh, so it's just great. Jailbreak, the opener, absolutely incredible. Emerald, one of my favorite Thin Lizzy songs. That sounds incredible here. And in the guitar solos, man, when Brian Robertson and Scott Gorham are trading off, and it Phil's just jamming away, and Brian Downey going away, man, that is just, I love it. It's just great. The crowd noise in this, you can hear the crowd, and Phil works the crowd at certain points. Let me see your hands, clap your hands and stuff like that, which is just great. It makes you feel like you're there. It's got some stage banter between some of the songs. Phil's legendary. I should remember exactly what he says. Does anybody out there have any Irish in them? Would any of the girls like to have a little bit more Irish in them? I mean, just great. Phil Lynott, one of the coolest frontmen out there. Uh, and the slow songs, the mid-tempo and the slow songs, they work great too, because Phil is just such a great singer and such a great storyteller. Like Dancing in the Moonlight, just great, man. I love the lyrics in that song. Always get chocolate stains on my pants. I mean, Phil is just great, and it just sounds fantastic here. That one's got a sax solo by John Earl, who is from the Graham Parker Band, I believe. Phil says that on the record when he gets done with his solo, which just adds another cool little dimension to it. Massacre, Johnny the Fox, Cowboy Song, Into the Boys Are Back in Town, which is something that they would do from their live shows after this. Even before this, that was those two songs paired together, because Cowboy Songs and is the life for me. Boom, ba da 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 da. It goes into Boys Are Back in Town. And it's just absolutely great. Just killer. Warrior. Are You Ready? Which is one of the songs that I mentioned earlier, unique to the record. Sha La La, which is just great, and it has, just a upbeat, kind of slightly funky, and it's got all this cool. Brian Downey takes a drum solo in that, and it's got all the cool Brian Downey fills and everything on it. He is such a great drummer. In my opinion, he doesn't get the recognition that he deserves in hard rock. He's just a fantastic drummer. He's got a great, almost like jazzy type feel at times, great groove, great feel to his playing, just awesome. And he sounds fantastic on this. Still in Love with You, the ballad, and one of my favorite ballads of all time. And again, it's because Phil sells it like no one else would be able to sell it. It is just absolutely beautiful. The guitar solos in that song are just great. Baby Drives Me Crazy, towards the end of the album, and you can tell that that's one that they just sort of, it's pretty much a straight ahead blues, but the band is just having fun, getting the crowd to clap along, Phil talking to the crowd, getting them to participate. And it even features a harmonica solo from Huey Lewis. Yes, that Huey Lewis, Huey Lewis that would go on to be with Huey Lewis and the News. At this point, I guess he didn't have his own band yet, or I'm not really exactly sure of the history there, but I think he was sort of an unknown at this point. But it's great fun. You can feel the energy, you can feel the excitement. Ends with "I'm a Rocker," which is just fantastic. That's the one song, one of the off of the first three albums, off of Vagabonds of the Western World, The Rocker. I'm sorry. Uh, and just absolutely great. The album cover is totally iconic. Image of Phil there. I read that this was actually supposed to be the front cover. The band wanted this because it showed everybody, and this was supposed to be the back cover. But the record company switched it, and now, of course, it's a legendary rock and roll image. Double album. Uh, Live pictures in there. I don't have the sleeve right here, but there's live pictures on the sleeve. And there's a lot of songs on this too. They move through a lot of songs. Sometimes the complaint I have with some live albums is just that you have too much soloing. The guitar player takes a long solo, the drummer takes a long solo, the keyboard player takes a long solo, and sometimes that's cool. But I like it when they're moving through the songs. When you're getting a lot of songs in there. And another complaint I have sometimes with live albums is when bands will do like too many medleys, or they do like a cover song that does like a 50s rock medley or something that just doesn't takes away, where I'm kind of like, man, I would just wish they played something from a studio album. But that's not the case on here. I mean, of course there's other songs that, oh boy, I wish they had put that on the record. But for me, it gets all the biggies that I want to hear. It touches all the bases. It's got such a great flow to it with the slower songs and with the faster songs, and it's just great from top to bottom. It's a great ride. You feel like you're there in the audience. I love live albums when you get to hear the band do a little bit of a different interpretation sometimes of the songs, and you get a little bit of that in here where Phil does some different things on the bass. There's some different drum fills and stuff, and the guitar solos, a little variety in there. So just an absolutely incredible live album, one of my favorite live albums of all time. I'm a huge fan of Thin Lizzy. I'm going to be talking about Thin Lizzy more. I feel bad that it's taken me this long to talk about Thin Lizzy, so I knew when I wanted to do these legendary live albums that this was going to be the first one that I did. Unfortunately, after this, Brian Robertson would leave the band, and I love the next record, Black Rose. It features Gary Moore, comes in at that point. But the next live album Thin Lizzy would release, although I like it, it just this one is just special. What can you say about it? Again, it captures the band right at the right moment. It's got all the great stuff on it and tons of energy. So just an absolute legendary live album. So let me know what you think in the comments, and make sure you hit subscribe and like. And until we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.